Being delusional is a superpower. Think about it. If you're not delusional, if you're just like negative, right? If you're just like, hey, I think that I put X amount of effort, so I will get this outcome. That's cool. That's very rational. It's very logical. You may get it. You also may not get it. And your confidence or your self-esteem or whatever you think you were trying to get by getting the reward, it may be either proven, like a scientist, right? Like if I do this, then this happens. And if that doesn't happen, then my theory is proven false. Like, cool, you're a scientist. You're an experimenter of sorts. But you're also doing things that is basically garnering an expected outcome. In other words, if you do one action and then the next thing happens, there's nothing delusional about it. It's pretty common sense. But a lot of people, they do exactly that. They think if I do something and then I should get something, in other words, I deserve it because I did the action, but they don't get the thing. And then they feel super sad, super angry, super just emotional. So what I've realized in my life is that being delusional is what's needed. And it is a superpower because clearly not everyone has it. They don't even have maybe the capability to be delusional. Maybe they're just too experienced in not seeing the outcome of when you're delusional and you can get basically anything you want. The flip side of that is, anyone watching, they probably think delusional people are crazy. But when you're, having some success in your life, you do realize many times like, oh my gosh, if I wasn't this delusional about XYZ goal, it would never happen. I'll share a personal story. This is another channel, not the main channel where I post videos on. What that means is, going back in history, I used to post videos online. We're talking in the 2010s, okay? Back then, to be monetized on YouTube, to make it a full-time career, to like earn money from AdSense, in other words, ads just on the videos as we see today, back in the day it was like paying per click. So people click on the advertisement, you get paid. Point being, I basically was young, naive, stupid, you could say. And yeah, I was clicking on my own ads because every time I clicked on an ad, in my account balance, it would go up. And 50 cents as a teenager ain't no joke, because back then you could actually buy a bag of chips for $1 or less. And what that meant is, monkey brain, if I click, I get money, right? It's very simple. And eventually I got banned from YouTube to make money in this fashion through the AdSense program for the rest of my life. Like on my social security number, that's it. Like, goodbye, right? Like, hey, nice to know you. Have a good life. I could still post on YouTube, but just not get monetized. So I was like, well, I wasn't doing YouTube to make money, but it would be really nice to make money, right? Like a why not? If I'm doing the thing, then why not? If I'm gonna do exactly what I'm doing, then I see no reason why not. So the delusion or delusionism or whatever word, right, for delusion comes in is fast forward many, 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 many years. As we all know, 2019, 2020, right, COVID happened. And when it happened, I had a choice. And at the time in my life, I was basically like, okay, well, I'm earning, through, let's say, a job, 9 to 5 kind of thing. And I asked myself, well, hey, if I'm earning, let's say, 50 an hour, right? Okay, that's 100K a year. Okay, if I'm earning 100 an hour, yeah, at 50 weeks in a year, at 40 hours per week, what that means is, 2,000 hours is where that math's coming from. So 100 an hour times 2,000, okay, wow, 200K a year. Man, not bad, right? Okay, yeah, 400, okay, wow, like, 400 an hour at 2,000 hours, now 800K a year. Man, not bad, getting towards 1 million. But then I also asked myself, like, hey, where in the world am I gonna get a job that pays guaranteed, right, for 2,000 hours a year at this rate of like, why not 1,000 an hour? And then I thought, okay, maybe, lawyer, doctors, they may not be billing per hour, but they're like total work per se, right? Scope of work equals this much in payout. So what that meant is I was like, okay, well, lawyers can also bill like a crazy rate per hour. And if you take away time from the equation, right? Because if you're earning like 5K an hour times 2,000 hours, like that math is probably $10 million per year, which is awesome, don't get me wrong. But in the end, it always came down to I'm selling my time for money. So this YouTube channel, not this one in particular, but YouTube as a whole, if you spend time, you don't really necessarily get paid at all with a guarantee. And as you spend more time over the years, there's still no guarantee. But what I also did know is if you spend some time and things hit for, good reason, obviously, hopefully you're not, making clickbait and nonsense and all the things, right? So if they hit, what does that mean? That means your time, irrespective of how much time you spent, you could see some outcome that you're like, oh, Okay. Like, it's not today or tomorrow, but maybe, a video hits like 2 weeks later, a month later, like, 6 months later. Sometimes it happens, right? A year later, you never know. And when that happens, you question yourself, well, hey, it's time agnostic. In other words, if I spend time, yeah, there's no guaranteed result today, but there is a way to make quote unquote passive income with effort that was already done, one and done, but you could reap the rewards for the longer term. What else is with YouTube? You also have the remote nature. In other words, yes, some people have a studio. I also have a studio in one way. But in the end, if I wanted to be in the middle of Zimbabwe, or I'm traveling, or, depending on the content niche, right? Obviously, you may want your setup, but theoretically, you can make a video from anywhere and make money. That's just like remote work, right? Like a digital nomad type of thing. And more than spending time, and more than being able to make money wherever, right, while you sleep, right, the dream as they always kind of push it out in marketing language, you could also do a third pillar with YouTube. You can scale. You don't need to be just one individual or one person, right? You can have employees, you can have a business, you can have a whole system behind it, a process, like a real business, right? And just say like, hey, I'm spending my time, but I could see rewards with it after the fact, even years later. Like on the main channel, I have videos from 4 or 5 years ago, which still make ad revenue. That's amazing. And if they have referral income through referrals, like check out the link in the description below. There's affiliate income, affiliate links to then, drive traffic, which if it converts, you're getting paid, right? It's all real, right? Which is crazy because back then internet money was like fake money, or people say Bitcoin is still a scam and all this. But coming back to delusionism, right? If that's the word, I was banned from making money on YouTube. So how is all of this working, right? And how it works is there was a little workaround where obviously even after the workaround, you have to have the right behavior, actions. And I've learned my lesson, right? After being burned and for just reason, right? Like it wasn't YouTube's fault. Like I was going against their rules at the time. And so basically, instead of an individual account, I made a business, like a proper LLC. And basically they own the channel, right? But it's me in the end, but from a legal perspective, it's a different entity. And now, just because I made this, company or whatever, like that doesn't mean you just get monetized. Back then, there were no requirements years and years ago, but you still needed, in my qualifications periods, which do change over the time, it's 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And, without getting into too many details, the important thing to notice here or to know is, hey, well, I'm not monetized today at the time of me trying to get to those metrics. But I also told myself like, man, what if they actually, when I apply, they see like, oh, this guy, this channel, this situation, what if after all this work, it doesn't happen? What if, But then I question myself, what if I get to the end of my life on my deathbed, right? The whole kind of analogy or question people say is like, hey, you're on your deathbed. What are you thinking about? In other words, like, what are the regrets you wish you, how do you wish your life went? Or what else do you think you did, kind of deal, right? And one of those things was to myself, I was like, yeah, that would be one of my regrets. I would be thinking there is a way, but it's like a gray area. What if it doesn't work out? And in the end, I was like, I'm not going to be on my deathbed being like, YouTube videos like, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm on my, you know what I mean? And like, so the point is that I basically told myself with Delusion, I was like, listen, I'm going to drop everything. This is the one goal. I'm going to do it. And if it happens, great. And if it doesn't, okay, well, all the benefits are there. In other words, a risk and reward, right? The reward is, hey, time freedom, theoretically, right? Like I still need to make time to make videos, but I could get time freedom. I could get location freedom, which is like I'm not stuck in one place. And third pillar, financial freedom, which, if things work out, you're financially getting rewarded. So if you think about it, time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom on the other side of having a choice to try or not to try. And I was like, for my mindset, I'm like, only an idiot wouldn't try. And I'm not an idiot, so I went for it. And yeah, it wasn't easy. And, after eventually, like I'm talking like a year and a half change, like it was a lot of work. That too, some support from the COVID times. Obviously some support by having knowledge of knowing what I wanted to talk about and digesting the platform's contents, because I'm a child of YouTube, if you want to call it like that. I wasn't here to just, let's make money and this type of thing. And in the end, that delusion got me my goal. The delusion of I'm already monetized. I just need to get to my goal. That's literally what I used to tell myself. I was like, the goal is already achieved. But yes, clearly I need to do the work to get there. Somebody is telling me, like this, somebody is telling me, hey, you need to do all these actions. It may not work out, but the goal is here. You just need to, keep it going, and you will get there. But just keep going. In other words, like delusion, because you're believing that all of this is true. And I tell myself, if I was not delusional, like other things in my life, I can share many stories like this, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, I hope there's at least one story you can tell yourself, like, man, I really needed to believe whatever to get to the other side. For me, growing up, I saw a lot of kids eventually in high school who were like, oh, school is nonsense. I hate math. I hate whatever. And I was lucky that I was around a group of people that if I was getting bad grades, they literally would be like, you are stupid. You don't get to hang out with us. You're basically not cool if you get bad grades. And in other, schools systems or just where you are, like it could be like, hey, you're nerdy, you get bullied because you're a nerd. And it's almost like, the old school primitive kind of thing where only like a six-pack abs and everything makes sense. But if you're actually having brain over bronze, you're like, you're basically really a threat to brawn, because the brawn is basically something anybody can get when of course, genes play a matter into it. But when you have brains, like, you're just naturally, let's say, gifted, or you're inclined to, go research something else, and you come off kind of nerdy, you're a threat to whatever, because at that time, the currency of high school and middle school is not money. The currency is, just like stupid stuff, because you're just like in that age of like, okay, nothing's really real, but as long as you're not physically getting hurt or like mentally getting in trauma, like everything is pretty much just going back and forth and just talking with each other and debating back and forth and discussing and fighting and bullying, all of this. It's not all of that, but I say that because in that time frame, if you think about delusion, right? I basically fooled myself into believing this kind of system where luckily the people around me weren't shaming me for being nerdy. They were just like, okay, this guy's kind of a nerd. I'm a nerd too. We're all nerds. Let's keep it going. And you could say that's kind of delusion. It doesn't sound like it, but it kind of is, because I didn't have any other input to think bigger than that. The delusion was me not really taking a stance in my life. I was just going with the flow. And I got really lucky in the currents of the ocean, in the waves of, whatever water body, because I was just going with the flow and I ended up on the other side. And although that's not delusion, I can see how if I was actually delusional in my high school years of, going on the opposite end of the spectrum, where like maybe I wanted to be a black sheep, maybe I wanted to be more than a class clown and just like a bad person, like I could be. But the question is, like, what is the outcome of being delusional, right? Like whenever people hear, oh, you're delusional, people take offense, right? Like it's like a negative term, but it's not that it's negative. It's negative in this situation, this type of story. If I was delusional to say like, hey, everybody on this path is, wrong and I'm right, like you're a little delusional, right? Just kind of definition, like you're doing things that are not, of the norm. But the outcome of going on that path would have also been way worse off than just following the path. Now, I'm not saying, everyone goes to college, so college is correct. And, if I'm delusional about going to college and I want to not go to college and I want to pursue entrepreneurship or selling real estate, selling cars, having some type of, thing that I'm doing without a cap, instead of just getting a salary after college, and that too, you could still not have a job because of the job market or competition for a promotion because there's other people. You kind of see what I'm trying to say in a different way, where just following the path doesn't mean that's the correct way. So what I am saying is delusion is basically the key to success. It's a superpower, because if you don't have delusion backing you, that's okay. But think about it. A really famous person on YouTube I watched, his name is Alex Hormozi. He basically was saying like, hey, imagine a stadium of people, right? And you can start off with a classroom or a room of 100 people. And you want to be, the top 0.001%, something like this. So if you want to be the top 1% in a 100 people room, you got to be the number one out of that 100. Now, if you want to be the top 1 out of 1,000, now you got to be the top 0.1%. So to be the 0.001%, you have to be 1 out of 10,000 or 100K. You can kind of see me doing the math. But the point is, you got to be better than everyone. Then you get to the next step and then be better than everyone. So it's like 10% of 10% of 10% of 10%. So the point is, you can be delusional about, being that person, the 1 out of a million, the 1 out of 272 million or whatever the statistic is to win the lottery. But that delusion, unless you have some actions to back it, you can just, lie to yourself that I will be the best, I will be number one, I will be a trillionaire, I will be this, I will be that. It's like the manifestation stuff where people manifest, I'm gonna be a 10 trillionaire and all my problems will go away, and like you can manifest it. But just like delusion, you're delusional if you manifest without action. In other words, you're just fooling yourself if you take no action or don't have a path to get to the next step, right? So being delusional is a superpower, but being delusional with a purpose, with action, commitment, discipline, motivation, determination, like all the fancy words, right? If you have the will and the way, in other words, if you look at the formal definition of demand in economics, it's the willingness and the ability. So I can want something, but if I don't have the money, I can't afford it. Or I have all the money, but I don't want that thing. In other words, there's no demand for it, even if there's supply. So delusion is a superpower. I've seen it work in my own life. If you're watching this video till this point, I'm telling you, figure out a way to be delusional about something. And it could be as silly as a water bottle. I don't have one near me, but if you flip it and it will land on its bottom, it may not do it on the first time, but if you're with delusion and practice, you may get it to be that circumstance maybe 7 out of 10 times, which that's probably better than the average person getting it maybe only 1 out of 10 times or 2 out of 10 times. So similarly, that is seen as like a superpower. In other words, the output of your delusion, you took action and you got to a result, which now is like a superpower because you're better than not just 1 or 2 people, you're better than a lot of them. And so in the same vein, I got monetized in the channel at the end of the day because of the delusion, and I was thoroughly not just impressed, I was surprised and all the things. And the question I left myself with was, eventually after I saw a few dollars trickle in, I was like, wait a second, like, what's next? What's next is, I asked this because this is going to be now another video here on the channel, but it basically came down to like the goal I set was to get monetized, and I did. But after I got monetized, I was like, wait, I hit the goal. And now I needed to make a new goal, basically with delusion. If I wanted, do I want 1 million subscribers? Do I want 100K on the channel? Do I want 100,000 income per month from the channel, right? And like, how would you do that, right? So like what is the target? What's a goal? And so like, then I had a new phase. So, just because you're delusional, you know what I'm saying? Like that type of thing, right? Being in belief that you can get something, that doesn't mean it just ends there, right? You probably gotta convince yourself one more time. And that's why I say, try it out with a unit of 1 framework. Like if you think it's crazy, okay, go try it out with something simple, right? Just, maybe you're boiling some water, right? And you say, hey, this water's gonna boil in 3.5 minutes. Now, from a science perspective, like it could or it could not, like that's just like really not really the greatest example, right? But it's a no loss example. You can take that risk of just saying it's gonna boil in 3.5 minutes. You can be like, you can feel whatever, but whatever happens, happens. But now like actually spending time on a year's basis, right? For a goal that may or may not happen, that type of thing is like the superpower you would need. And maybe sometimes this type of building up to it is what's needed if you're not already at that level. And if you're already a little delulu or it's normal in your life, then guess what? Keep it going, right? Like keep it going, but have a system around it. Not control it, but if you're a very strong person, you can become even stronger, right? And if you're very weak, I mean, you can only get so much weaker, right? Like other than not being, here on the planet, right? So in other words, it's like a skill, being delusional. I'm not saying fool yourself into a non-existence, but I am saying that it is a superpower. And just as they say in Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So yeah, use it and it will happen. Whatever you want, it can happen, it will happen. And yeah, you gotta tell yourself that it's already happened sometime. That's how I did it. And it's not easier not to do the path, but I'm like, it's like someone waiting for you at the train station, you're trying to get there. And you gotta have left your place like 5 minutes ago to be there on time. But guess what? You still hit the goal, even if it's a little late. That's the biggest thing. It's okay, it's right, better late than never, as they say. So be delusional, you know what I mean. Be delulu, whatever the word is, and you got it. And thanks for coming to the end. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.